In this video, we look at a side-by-side comparison of box plots. I'm in a data file you could search for if you'd like to follow along. It's called Chapter 2B Data Lists. I am going to compare commute times for three cities, San Francisco, Concord, and New York. I'm using random samples from 20 folks in each city to construct my box plots and do my comparison. I'm going to go to Graph Box Plot and scroll down so that I can select all three cities. I'm going to do this by dropping and dragging. I can also use Control and click through. And then I'm going to uncheck use fences to identify outliers. We'll check in later with how that works. I go ahead and hit compute and I get my three box plots side by side. I can stretch my graph to make it larger, and then I can compare SF, Concord, and New York commute times. Right away, looking at the box plots, I can see they all have close to the same minimum commute times, but the maximum commute times seem to differ. It looks like San Francisco has a maximum commute time somewhere around 70 minutes. Concord has a maximum commute time maybe a little less than 60 minutes, and New York has a maximum commute time over 80 minutes. I can also quickly compare the medians. The medians are the lines through the center of the boxes, and I can see San Francisco has a higher median commute time, and it looks like Concord has the lowest of the median commute times. The median is a measure of center, so if I was going to try to make a statement comparing a typical commute time for each of these cities, I would use a median. So I would say it looks like San Francisco has the highest typical commute time. To see the exact values in the box plot, we hover our mouse over. So we're told for SF commute times, there are 20 values, meaning 20 people were in this random sample. Our interquartile range, IQR, is found by subtracting quartile 3 minus quartile 1. So if we check 63 minus 28.5, that's where the 34.5 value for IQR is coming from. That's the distance of this center box. So the bottom of our blue box here is quartile 1, and the top of our blue box is quartile 3. So that distance of the middle values, a typical range of values, is 34.5 minutes, from 28.5 minutes to 63 minutes. We call the middle box a typical range of values because we are not including any extremely low values and we're not including any extremely high values. We've got that middle measure. If we move over to Concord and hover our mouse over Concord, we see again there's 20 values. The IQR for Concord is a lot smaller, and when we compared the center boxes visually, we could see that. So the IQR for Concord, the length of this middle box is 20.5 minutes, and we could calculate that by saying 31.5 minutes subtract 11 minutes. Q3 subtract Q1. We also see the maximum for Concord is 55 minutes. If we come over here, we see New York has a interquartile range of 27.5, so its center box range is somewhere between Concord and San Francisco commute times. It has a max of 85, and we can check if we subtract quartile 3 at 42.5 minutes minus quartile 1 at 15 minutes, that interquartile range gives us a 27.5. Just looking at the medians, we see the New York median at 22.5 minutes is higher than the Concord median, which is 18 minutes, but less than the San Francisco median commute time, which is 48.5 minutes. Let's go back to our options and see what happens if we put in the outliers. So if we check the box to use fences to identify outliers and click compute, we see here that New York has an outlier commute time. If we hover our mouse over that, we see that that is at maximum at 85. So when we put our mouse over the box now, instead of saying max, we're given the upper limit of 65. So StatCrunch has run the formula for outliers, where we take the interquartile range and multiply by 1.5, and use that to figure out what's the upper limit for outliers and the lower limit. So the lower limit is the same as our minimum value, 5, but the upper limit now is where we would cut off for outliers. So any commute times over 65 minutes in New York, we'd say are upper outliers. San Francisco and Concord had no upper outliers or lower outliers, so there's no dots in their box plots. The other option to compare box plots is to draw them horizontally. So you can go to Options Edit, and check the box to draw the boxes horizontally. Now we have the same box plots, but they are rotated so that the times are along the x-axis now. And again, we can do the same comparison and see San Francisco down here at the bottom has a higher median. We can see the outlier for New York up here, still at 85 minutes. And we can see Concord still has the lowest interquartile range. So if I were to ask which city has the smallest range of typical commute times, I would answer Concord because it has the smallest interquartile range here in the distance from quartile 1 to quartile 3. If I were to ask which city has the highest typical range of commute times, or the widest range of commute times, I would say San Francisco, because the distance in the interquartile range of 34.5 is the biggest of the 3 cities, meaning its center box is the widest. It's up to you whether you draw your box plots vertically or horizontally. Sometimes in assignments I'll ask you to draw it one way or another as we're learning how to use StatCrunch. If I don't specify, it's your choice whether you make horizontal or vertical box plots. What the box plots are useful for is doing a quick side-by-side comparison. In this case, we're comparing different days. In the lab assignment, or different cities. In the lab assignment, you'll get to compare different days of weeks to see differences in the box plots.